celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean? Jump and shout all over the nation. We're breaking out with a new creation.
Each year, Belizeans mark June 1 to November 30, as this is the Atlantic Basin hurricane season. Our Belize Watch team stopped by the National Meteorological Service's office in Ladyville to speak with Chief Meteorological Officer Ronald Gordon about their role and preparations for the annual hurricane season. We will have that conversation after we hear from our partners. Shell Belize, Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, the Barry, and the National Gas Company.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orangerock, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Be less.
Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow. Shell V-Power, with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
I remember the days when trucks used to line up at the Guatemala border, and we could have only watch as they come in loaded with LPG and then left with we Belizean dollars. Things changed since, because the Belizeans they drive now, that we have the jobs, and are definitely proud to be able to keep me dollars home. Either Elvis Roaches, and either one of the Belizean drivers for the National Gas Company. I haul butane from the new state-of-the-art terminal to the port of Big Creek. The hard work, but at the end of the day, I go home to my family and provide for them. Thanks to NGC, I did do my leap part to build my country. We the all Belizeans on this team, and we're proud to work hard to deliver one product will last longer and give you more value for money. I proud to work at NGC, and for you we Belizean people.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
It is the hurricane season, and I have the honor and privilege of being in the office of the Chief Meteorological Officer, Ronald Gordon. And as you know, this is an active time of the year, Ronald. This is a time when the hurricanes, the tropical storms, the tropical depressions, and everything show their face and say, well, here we are. Right? Thank you for having me here.
Sure, and thanks for being here.
No, Ronald, let's look at you first. But then we start to look at the hurricanes and how hurricanes are formed and that sort of thing. Who is Ronald Garden?
Oh, well, as you rightly mentioned, I'm the Chief Meteorologist. I have been with the National Meteorological Service since 1998. So coming on 24 years, or 24 years going on 25 years of being in the department. I became Chief Meteorologist about 2 years ago. And so in that position now, I am head of department, and of course, providing daily update on weather conditions as well as managing the department.
What made you become interested in meteorology?
For me, at first, it was a job. So I came out of high school, I was seeking employment, and it came up. But once I got here, I immediately realized it was something I liked. So I went on to pursue my associate, first of all, my A-levels, so that I can further my studies in the field. And after that, I got the opportunity to go and do weather forecasting. And from there, I did my degree, my bachelor's and my master's degree, and certainly I'm here now, and it's a pleasure. It's something that I'm into, and I really like doing.
Is there a special incident that happened that made you say, oh, this is it, this is what I want for myself?
Well, like I said, once I got here and I got into looking at the weather forecasters, the meteorologists, and so on in action, definitely. It's the activity, especially around the hurricane season. I can't deny it. There's a certain amount of activity, a certain amount of flurry that goes on, that certain gets you into the position that you want to know what. I want to be monitoring these systems. I want to be providing information to the public. I want to be ensuring that people are prepared and that type of thing.
Now, Ronald, you said you went to study in meteorology. You came back. Walk us through the process that got you to where you are today as chief meteorologist.
Yes, like I did mention, you start off as a weather observer. So that person is someone who goes out there and basically takes measurements. You look at the temperature, humidity, pressure, and that type of thing. We estimate the amount of clouds and that type of thing. So you start off as a weather observer in the department, and then after that, once you're interested, you get the opportunity to go on to do what we call a Class 3 Met Officer. That would be someone who basically does some assistance in terms of recording information and that type of thing. Fortunately for me, the opportunity came that I went to do a weather forecasting course, which is an 18-month course. It's a certificate that you get at the end of that course. And that would basically qualify you to become a weather forecaster, the persons that you hear on the radio giving the weather forecast. At that point in time, when I was doing the forecasting course, I don't want to say much about myself, but I was doing good. And so my grades were reflective. Well, they noticed that my grades were good enough for me to do a degree. So I got the opportunity to go on and do the degree at the University of the West Indies. I was already in Barbados because I was at Cave Hill. I was at the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, which is also in Barbados. And then from there I went on to UA, at the Cave Hill campus to do the degree, And then immediately after that, I got the chance to do a master's degree, so I said, why not? Right. Let's do it. Yes.
Then you came home and you got a promotion, or what happened after you came home for the master's degree?
Yeah, after I came home, I became a meteorologist, which is pretty much someone who does the weather forecasting as well, but also has some responsibility in terms of managing certain section of the department, and also has the responsibility of doing some level of research into our local weather and that type of thing. And after that, I became head of the climate section, which is where we certainly do the seasonal climate forecasts. We maintain the records, the climate records and that type of thing, and provide information to the public on climate conditions. And then from there, the next position was the deputy chief meteorologist, and then it's where I am now.
Now, when you started 24 years ago, the equipment would have been quite primitive to what it is today, or are you using pretty much the same stuff you were using 24 years ago?
What I would say is that some of it is the same, but there has been improvement in terms of the quality and the technology. So when I came here back in 1998, we had satellite imagery that were, I would say, very low resolution. You were not able to pinpoint locations on the country to identify cloud clusters and that type of thing. Since then, we have improved. We are down to about 1 kilometer. I think it's even higher than that in terms of the resolution. So certainly, it has improved. Another aspect that has improved significantly is our weather prediction capability. The models have improved significantly. And I always show these graphics, especially when it comes to hurricane forecasting, whereby back in the 90s, when you said a hurricane was going to make landfall, for example, in Belize City, the margin of error was significant. Yes. It could have been a good distance to the south or to the north. But now with all the improvement in weather observations, the weather prediction models and that type of thing, we're able to more pinpoint with a bit more accuracy where these systems will make landfall.
Yeah, when you said about predicting where the weather would be, my mind went back to what I run as a joke now, but it was very serious at that time. When we had lost the hurricane, I think it would have been somewhere in the 70s, might have been, right? And we were doing, well, Radio Belize at the time was saying, our brothers in southern Belize, help is on the way. Remember that time we didn't have good telephone communication. Everything was very poor. Messages were relayed via ham radio and that sort of thing. We were sympathized. The station was really saying that help is on the way and what have you. And finally, a message got through from the Toledo district saying, hey, what you're all talking about? The sun is shining here. Because it was figured, they didn't have the technology that they have today to forecast, and we have seen that technology improve over the years, and I think that's what you're saying. Certainly.
So apart from just having the improved models and the tracking equipment and so on, another important thing is that you have the hurricane hunters that constantly fly into these storms also to pinpoint the exact location. And I cannot finish this conversation without talking about the radars that we have now also, no? So once the system is about to make landfall, we use our Doppler radar to pick up the center of that system and to track it and pinpoint exactly where it is. So certainly there has been significant improvement in that area.
Now, before we go into hurricanes and so on, let us talk a little bit about the structure of the Department of Meteorology, how you're structured. You're the chief. Explain to us how the staff is laid out.
Okay, so the department is comprised of 3 main sections. We have of course, we have administration, I should say 4. Administration is where I fall in, so we have to manage the department, ensure that all necessary equipment is here, ensure that everything is working properly, that the staff we have a full complement of staff and that type of thing on a daily basis. So there's the administrative part, and then there's our technical part, whereby we have 3 sections. We have what we call now the agroclimatic section. We previously called it the climate section, but we kind of renamed it because of the emphasis on providing specialized information for agriculture. We also have, that is headed by Ms. Shear Young at the moment, and she's the senior climatologist in that section. We have the weather analysis and forecasting section, also known as the synoptic section, but that's a big word, so we sort of renamed it so that people can understand exactly what they do. And of course, those are the persons that you hear on radio, you would see on television if we had television broadcasts, and they're the one that constantly monitor the weather situation. We have weather observers in that area that I mentioned. I started off as a weather observer that provide information mainly to the pilots, to aircraft operation. And of course, they keep that records also to basically provide to the climate section for them to know what's going on with our weather on a monthly, yearly basis. And the last section, but certainly not least, is our electronic section. And these are the persons who basically make sure all our equipment are functioning properly and that type of thing. So that's our technicians and so on would be working in that section. I did mention that, okay, the electronic section is headed by Mr. Roy Thompson, senior electronic technician, and our deputy chief meteorologist, who is Michelle Augustine, is in charge of the weather analysis and forecasting section of the department. So that's basically the structure of the National Met Service at the moment.
When we think of Met Service, it's not only hurricanes and so that you're working with, but you're really helping farmers across the country. The aircrafts that fly into this country, they all monitor the forecasts that you give and the weather conditions. I think even the local planes that move around would check with you and say what the weather is like. So you really provide a wide service, a huge service that maybe might be taken for granted, you know.
I'm glad that you bring that up because, yes, indeed, it's something that many persons don't know about, but the amount of sectors that we impact with the services that we provide, the products that we issue, is a wide array. Like you mentioned, agriculture, aviation, tourism, energy as well. We currently have projects with BL and BCOL in terms of providing them with information on the Macal River area for their dams and operations. So certainly the Met Department, I would say, is a vital important, not because I'm here, but certainly because it is a department that provides a very significant input into Belize's socio-economic development. And we do stress that on our website. We stress it in terms of our mission and vision and that type of thing.
Yes, definitely you play that very key role in keeping everyone informed as to where the weather what type of weather we're having, what we will experience, and especially in times of emergency, what we can expect. Because I know in doing hurricane coverages, we rely a lot on how we relay the information that you provide to us, right? So I don't necessarily want to be covering a hurricane this year. In all honesty, I don't look forward to that at all this year. And I'm sure you might say the same thing.
Certainly. We do, of course, are prepared in case one comes our way, but like you rightly mentioned, it's not something that we want, it's not something that we look forward to, but it's a part of our duty. So once a system comes our way, we are prepared, of course, to monitor and to provide accurate information to the public.
You said prepared to monitor and provide accurate information. What is that preparedness all about? How do you prepare yourself for a hurricane season?
Well, one of the main things is to ensure that all or most of our equipments are functioning as best as possible. So I mentioned our radar. It is up and running. So that is one of the very important tools that we use in terms of monitoring landfalling hurricanes. We also ensure that our network of automatic weather stations are functioning and that we are servicing these stations to the best of our ability in a timely manner, that they are up and running in case we need those stations to provide us information in real time whenever a storm is making landfall on the country. Of course, preparation is also entails training, and as of recently, we had 2 of our senior personnel trained in weather forecasting, in hurricane forecasting to be exact, and storm surge prediction. So those are some of the preparations that we take or that we make to ensure that we are prepared to provide that information to the public.
And hurricanes usually come in this special season, June to November. You keep hearing it, June to November, June to November. Why just in that specific time of the year?
Well, the main thing about that time of the year is that it corresponds with the summer in our hemisphere, right? So that's one of the important things to note. So the sea surface temperatures are warmer than they would be in the winter period. And the conditions in the atmosphere are also better. There's less what we call wind shear, and I'm going to describe that perhaps in a while. But the conditions are favorable for tropical cyclones to develop within this particular period, and that is the reason why we focus on that period, and that is the reason why they form during that period. And a bit of information, if you were in Australia, for example, your hurricane season will be in the period from December to maybe April, when it's our winter, or well, you don't really have winter in Belize, but you know the northern hemisphere is winter, and in that case, it's the southern hemisphere summer. So that's the connection between hurricanes and the seasons.
There are two ways of hurricane forming, right? One is the one that they form off Africa, the deserts in Africa, come out over the open Atlantic and pick up strength and what have you. And the other, sometimes they form right below us in the Caribbean basin, right below, maybe let us say Nicaragua or Honduras, in that area, and become a danger for us as well. So let's talk about the formation of these hurricanes. Maybe you could maybe take us more into detail.
Okay, sure. One of the main things for there to be hurricanes is that you need the energy, right? You need the fuel. Nothing cannot form, or a hurricane cannot form without an adequate supply of that particular fuel. Yeah. And what is that fuel? It's the warm ocean waters, certainly. So as you'd expect, a Category 5 hurricane, for example, is a massive system. The amount of energy that is being expended within that system is tremendous, and that has to come from somewhere, and that comes from the warm ocean waters. So you need waters of at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit to a depth of about 50 meters from surface to below, to about 50 meters, for the system to be able to get that energy. The second ingredient is, of course, for there to be moisture in the atmosphere, because if you have warm waters, but then as soon as you get thunderstorms developing, they die out because of too much dry air, then you won't have anything developing. So certainly you need that moisture. And the third ingredient, I would say, is minimal wind shear. I mentioned it a while ago. So what is... Yes, it's important to note. When these thunderstorms are forming, you have the evaporation from the ocean surface, right? You have That's how the energy leaves the ocean, actually, through evaporation. You have the moisture evaporating and eventually rising up, condensing if the atmosphere is moist enough, producing clouds, and these clouds grow really huge and become thunderstorms. Now, if you have what we call wind shear, it means that the winds at the lower level of the atmosphere are contrary to those at the higher level, and also not only contrary in direction, but in speed. So basically, the system is going that way at the lower levels, and the other levels is going the other direction, and it's being torn apart. For a hurricane to form, you want those thunderstorms basically to grow, and for that energy to remain in one spot so that you can have that lower pressure developing. If they are torn apart rapidly, that won't happen. So certainly, lower wind shear is important for the system to become organized, for there to be amount of energy, that warming that you will need, and that low pressure to develop.
Yeah. And so whenever that low pressure develops, that's what converts into the eye of the storm eventually, right?
The center of the low pressure will eventually become the eye.
The eye. So the hurricane spins around that eye.
Exactly, and it rotates counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, and clockwise in the southern hemisphere, in a different direction.
Yeah. So here for us, it's clockwise, counterclockwise here for us. It's always counterclockwise, right? So it will go that way, right? So it depends where you are situated. When the eye is passing, it depends where you are situated, where they get the brunt or the tail.
Yes, an important point is that if you're in the north, what we call the north right quadrant, certainly that's where you'll get not only the stronger winds, but also the more severe storm surge, the water coming in. Because for us, of course, that means that the wind is coming onshore. And once it comes onshore, it brings the water wind in with it, and that's what we call the storm surge. Whereas if you're on the southern end, the storm, if it's moving from east to west, which typically is the case for us, then the storm is moving contrary to where the wind will be blowing. So then, of course, the winds will be a bit lighter on the southern end, and also the winds will be moving from land to sea. So basically the sea will appear to recede. Instead of you having a surge, you'll have the waters becoming shallower, no? So you'll get less in terms of that. But it's important to note that you will still be having severe weather conditions, even if you're on the southern end of the storm. Because, for one, the winds will be strong, especially if it's a major hurricane. Right? And of course, there's the rainfall, which is very significant, important to note. So whether you're at the north of the center or the south, you should be prepared. But of course, if you're at the north of the center, you'll get the heavier or the more severe weather.
And we shouldn't let that receding sea fool us, right? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, the sea has receded, and look at everything is calm." And you shouldn't let that fool you, because the wind can obviously, a hurricane is moving, so it can definitely come back and come back harder and bring back maybe even a tidal wave with it. Is that so?
Certainly. Especially if you're the south of the center, the sea will recede, but it has to come back in. Yeah, so we definitely don't encourage persons to go out there and explore. That's a no-no. You remain indoor. At that times, of course, people should be in shelter. People shouldn't be out there anyway. But yes, as you rightly mentioned, it will come back. And then another important point, and I guess you're alluding to it, is that if the eye passes you, it doesn't mean it's over. No. We know that, and that's where the change of direction of the wind comes. Because if you are, I would say, bad lucky enough that the eye passes over you, you will get winds most likely from the north at the beginning. Then you'll get that calm when the eye passes, and then the wind will come from the south, from the opposite direction, after the eye has passed.
That reminds me, Ronald, of an incident we were covering. I think I can't remember which hurricane it was. It might have been Richard. Because we covered so many of them, I tend to confuse them. But we were covering the hurricane, and I think the radar had gone down for some reason here at the Weather Bureau. I don't know if you remember the incident. And we could not locate where the eye was coming ashore. And then there was this sudden call, I think it was from Gales Point, if I'm not mistaken, where I was told that there's a calm over the village, that the hurricane has already passed, and the citizens were preparing to leave the shelter, right? And I said, no, get back in your shelter, That's the eye. We have been looking for it. That's exactly where the eye of the storm is. And I think I met a lady later on when I went to visit because I was curious to see what happened there. And she said we had just managed to close the door when or the shelter when the winds came harder from the opposite direction, and I would have got us on the street celebrating. I started, that incident sort of stayed with me. I'm not sure if I can. It's been some years now, so I'm not sure if I remember it correctly. But you might have been around at that time. I'm not sure, Richard.
Yeah, when in Hurricane Richard, I was actually in Miami. I was doing my master's around that time, so I wasn't here. But I sort of remember the incident or hearing of it. Yeah. So indeed, it's indeed one of those things whereby what we say really comes true. No, if the eye comes over you and you get that calm, you don't take it for granted. You don't leave. And yeah, in general, persons should not leave the shelter unless the all clear is declared. That's important.
We will have much more of our conversation after we take a break to hear from our partners.
We are Dibari, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. Dibari. Get more? Be less.
Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow. Shell V-Power, with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
I remember the days when trucks used to line up at the Guatemala border, and we could have only watch as they come in loaded with LPG and then left with we Belizean dollars. Things changed since, because the Belizeans they drive now, that we have the jobs, and are definitely proud to be able to keep me dollars home. Either Elvis Roaches, and either one of the Belizean drivers for the National Gas Company. I haul butane from the new state-of-the-art terminal to the port of Big Creek. The hard work, but at the end of the day, I go home to my family and provide for them. Thanks to NGC, I do my lead part to build my country. We the all Belizeans on this team, and we're proud to work hard to deliver one product will last longer and give you more value for money. I proud to work at NGC, and for you we Belizean people.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
We're talking about hurricanes now that form over the warm waters of the Atlantic or the Caribbean Sea. What about those that form in the deserts in Africa that would blow off the coast of Africa and travel all the way down and come and tell us hello?
Well, to be clear, the systems cannot form over the desert or over land.
The wind comes off the desert.
Yes. What happens is what you're probably referring to as tropical waves, and those emerge off Africa on a frequent basis during the hurricane season. So they actually form because of the mountainous areas over northern Africa, and it's a bit complicated to go into the physics of it, but definitely tropical waves are one of the main, I would say, pre-ingredients for hurricanes. And those waves, not all of them, of course, will become hurricanes. Like I mentioned, during the peak of the season, you can have maybe up to 8 waves crossing per month over us. And not all of them become hurricanes or tropical depressions. So a very important point that you mentioned that, because one of the major misconceptions that we have sometimes that people hear the word tropical wave and immediately think tropical storm. So we will get calls if a storm is coming. We heard something on the radio, but I would like to use this opportunity to tell the public that a tropical wave is not a tropical storm.
Explain the difference between a tropical wave and a tropical storm. I think you might have just done so, but we need to just get it out very clearly. Since you're right, we always tend to loosely say a tropical wave instead of a tropical storm, and it might be either or the other.
Yes, a tropical wave, as I mentioned, could become a tropical storm or a tropical depression first, then a tropical storm, if the conditions are right. An important difference is that a wave, as the word would suggest, doesn't entail a complete rotation or a circular rotation. So the wave is like a wave in the ocean. You go up, you go down back. That's it. No recurvature, no going all around. You understand? Yeah, a wave is like, that's it. So a tropical wave will have an axis, and in front of the wave, the winds will be coming from the northeast because you have that component, and behind the wave, you have a southeasterly wind. And that's what a tropical wave basically is, a wave in the flow of the air. It's a wave. And because of how the wave is oriented, you could have thunderstorms developing, and they mostly develop on the other side of the wave, what you call I would say the lee side of the wave. Anyway, the tail, or the other side. So those thunderstorms, of course, are one of our main rainfall producers during the rainy season. And if conditions are right, as I mentioned before, and I already described the conditions that that could favor tropical development, then that wave those thunderstorms that are forming along that wave could become better organized. You get that spin, you get that complete circulation, and then you get a depression forming, right? And if conditions continue to be right, the depression strengthens into a tropical storm and eventually a hurricane. And just a little bit of information, the tropical depression, first of all, has a complete circulation, a closed circulation, as you would hear sometimes from the National Hurricane Center, and wind speeds of less than 39 miles per hour. Yeah, a depression, organized thunderstorms. Now, once that system has gained enough strength that the wind speed becomes 39 miles per hour or more, it is classified as a tropical storm. That's between 39 miles and 73 miles per hour winds. And if it becomes even more stronger, that it exceeds that 73 and becomes 74 miles per hour, then you're talking about a hurricane. And one last point I would make on that, once it becomes a tropical storm, it gets a name, right? So it gets one of the names that we have already reserved, or what do you call it? The names before the season. And then a hurricane, of course, already has a name. So a named storm is a tropical storm and higher. And one last thing I guess I should mention, the hurricanes now are categorized into different categories. So based on what we call the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. The lowest category is category 1, and the highest is category 5. And we say that anything from a category 3 and above we call a major hurricane, and that would be over 110 miles per hour winds. So once it passes 110 miles per hour winds, then we classify it as a major hurricane, category 3 or higher.
Catastrophic.
Exactly. Catastrophic damage can result from such a system.
Okay, well, let's look at this year's hurricane season, the projected season for hurricane season this year. What does it look like?
Okay, so we mentioned the ingredients that are needed for systems to develop, and unfortunately, they are good for hurricane development. So we are looking at warmer than normal ocean temperatures in our area, and also weaker than normal wind shear, and that is connected to what we call El Nino and La Nina. So for briefly, El Nino means that you have more storms in the Pacific and more storms in that side. You have more warmer waters on that side. You have more storms on that side. Those storms will tend to vent air over to us. So I did mention that a tropical storm or hurricane need thunderstorms to develop. And these thunderstorms, once they grow big and develop and eventually reach to a certain height, what we call the chopper pass, they cannot go farther. It's like they reach a ceiling. So they can't pass from there, so the air comes out. If you ever see a massive thunderstorm, you'll see that it spreads out like an anvil. We call it an anvil. The same thing is occurring with a major hurricane or a hurricane on the Pacific side. The air is spreading out, and that air that is spreading out from over there will eventually move over to us and has very strong air at the higher levels, and therefore you have stronger wind shear, and therefore less ability for storms to develop on our side. That's on El Nino. La Nina, now, Their conditions, their oceans are cooler than normal, less storms over there, and therefore less wind shear, and therefore more favorable conditions for a storm to develop in our side of the oceans or in the Atlantic. And both of those conditions, like I said, are favorable this year. We are looking at warmer than normal sea surface temperatures on our side, and also no El Nino and more likely La Nina. So having said that, the forecasting agencies are going for above normal. I believe, if I can recall correctly, it's about 14 to 21 named storms from NOAA, their prediction, and about 6 to 10 hurricanes, and about 3 to 5 major hurricanes for the Atlantic basin. But important to mention here, that is a prediction for the entire basin. It is not saying that all those storms will come our way. It is not telling us any information about where they will go. So it is important that, of course, residents pay keen attention to daily updates that is coming from us, from the National Meteorological Service, and to monitor whatever potential development that there may be at any time. And of course, once a system forms, we will track it closely and provide information up to the minute on what the system is doing.
Because as we are in the Caribbean, right? Storms, like I said, will form all the way from Africa and come towards us, or from below us, in the Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama area. Those are the popular areas. And Belize's location is on the Yucatan Peninsula. And how much does the opening with the Gulf of Mexico attract these storms to go towards the Gulf area, which would mean that they will come up from south to north and looking for warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico, and thereby passing over us or in front of us?
Well, typically, the systems are steered by whatever the upper level winds are at the time. So there could be occasions whereby the winds are in such a way that they will steer them towards the Gulf, and sometimes the winds are in such a way that they steer them straight west into Central America. And some peculiar occasions, which is unfortunate for us, the systems will be picked up maybe by what we call an upper level trough, and taken from the Southwest Caribbean Sea up towards the Northwest Caribbean Sea. And then sometimes that trough will pull away, leaving the system hanging behind, and then behind that you have a ridge. A ridge basically have the wind spinning down, no back, and the system will recurve over to us. So that has happened with the famous Hurricane Hattie. Yeah, whereby it was moving towards the north and eventually recurved and come on us. And those are the most dangerous for us, because if you notice the geography where Belize is, if systems are to farm over the Southwest Caribbean Sea and move west, of course they move over Central America, they become weaker. Even if they move northwest, they have to pass Nicaragua, Honduras, and they have a small chance of redeveloping or becoming better organized over the Gulf of Honduras, but then that window of opportunity is a bit small. However, if the perfect situation arises, which is not the perfect situation for us, but for the storm, it is the perfect situation, whereby it moves north, stays over water, and then recurves, remains over water, and comes over us like what Hattie did, then that's when we're in serious trouble.
Hattie, they said it was going to Jamaica. That was the forecast. It was coming south, going, like you rightly said, northeast, right? And then it made this certain westward turn and headed straight for Belize. It's a whole. It's interesting to see what Hattie did. Yeah.
And one of the important points to mention, though, and I will repeat it, back in those days, of course, we were looking at the 1960s, 1961. The forecast models would not have been able to probably predict that recurvature. But with our advances in forecasting nowadays, you would see that the cone probably would show that curvature, that the system will make that curve, because the models are able to identify that something is going to happen. The wind, the steering currents are going to change, and the system will change track or change its trajectory along the way.
When we look at the maps and we see this cone going out from where the hurricane is located, there's a margin of error in that cone. What's the margin of error, and how likely it is that the hurricane will hit any area within that cone?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up. The cone itself is indicating the margin of error. That's an important point. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So the cone itself is indicating the margin of error. So the wider you see that cone, that means There's less unpredictable. There is less predictability. It's very unpredictable. And the narrower you see that cone, that means there's more confidence in the forecast. That means we're almost certain that it will go in that direction. Another important point, that the cone is showing you where the eye or the center of the solar system will be. So if the system goes on the southern edge, for example, of the cone, of course, persons outside of the cone will be impacted because the storm is not a little one point, right? So those are some important points. One last point about the cone. People sometimes think that the cone means that the storm they get bigger. When they see the cone, they widen. They're not because that. Of course, it's because the uncertainty is increasing in time. Yeah.
And you notice, particularly as you get close to land, you see the cone just widening because of a lot of uncertainty. I can remember a hurricane at which one it was dancing up and down the coast of Belize. It goes north and it goes south. I can't remember which one that was. We covered so many of them. But I can remember it affecting the Keys because one spell it's heading north, then it was heading down south, and finally, anyway, that's part of the whole coverage, the excitement of the hurricane coverage.
I think probably I'm referring to Keith. I know Keith was a bit tricky.
Keith, that was very tricky.
Yeah. And it kind of sat there for a long time also over near the San Pedro.
Yes.
And pounded them with I think, major hurricane force winds for a very long time. And the entire country was impacted by the amount of rainfall because even though it was out there, I knew that I was at the airport at the time. I had just joined the service for 2 years because it was in 2000. And that system is still on record as the one that dumped the most rainfall on this station. We recorded in a 24-hour period, we recorded almost 19 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period from Hurricane Keith.
Yes, I remember Hurricane Keith. I remember that very well, that up and down movement, and then the stalling, and we kept wondering, well, when will it move? Will it move away?
It was really a bit, I would say, worrying and a bit frustrating because you are sitting there and this thing is just standing there and pounding you. And eventually it did make landfall on Belize, but by that time it has weak. Well, it was a tropical storm. But of course, we can't say that to our good folks in San Pedro because they took the brunt of
They took a licking there,
major hurricane force winds, yeah.
The beaches and what have you. This year now, going back to this year now, we hurricanes would more affect us towards the September, October, November part of the hurricane season. The June, July, August, we tend to get more tropical storms and tropical depressions and what have you. Why is that?
Typically it means that time of the year, the ocean currents, the ocean waters are a bit warmer over us, for one. And two, the steering at that time of the year tend to bring them more in our direction. So you may have heard of something called the Central American gyre. It's a recent phenomenon that has been given that name. Of course, it has been there for a while, but we just probably coined that name recently. That phenomenon tends to spring up both at the beginning of the season and at the ending towards September, October. And they tend to span system in our area of the basin. It's a broad cyclonic circulation around Central America coming from the Pacific, in which you have a lot of what we call vortices, these little circulation spinning up, and they can develop into tropical systems. Also, at the end of the season, we have the tail end of cold fronts that would come down. And those cold fronts sometimes produce weather conditions that persist over an area, and eventually you have a tropical depression developing, or a tropical storm, and eventually a hurricane from from that system.
Those are the ones that will develop mostly south of us, right? The ones in the Panama, Nicaragua area, those develop south of us, southwestern Caribbean Sea, as against the ones coming like through the mid-Atlantic, coming through Barbados and what have you.
Yes, definitely. The ones that develop from the tail end of cold fronts form right almost in our door fronts. Yeah. And
they can become very vicious because they have had some vicious ones forming right at our...
If I'm not mistaken, I think Hurricane Mitch formed from the tail end of a cold front.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mitch was like that.
Yeah.
But Mitch did a very amazing thing. I can recall Mitch standing up in front of Belize, or stalling in front of Belize almost. It was pounding the Bay Islands of Honduras, but at the same time, it just looked at Belize. You recall Mitch?
Yes, of course. Mitch was in my first year at the Met Service. I will never forget Mitch. And perhaps that is part of the reason why I got into this field and wanted to stay here too, because of the amount of, I know folks don't like to hear this, but there's a certain amount of excitement in meteorologists when it comes to hurricane. It's a dangerous thing, and we know that it's very devastating to a lot of persons, but then as a scientist and somebody who is intrigued by weather, you tend to become a bit carried away and become excited when you see those monsters forming. But back to the point of Mitch. Mitch indeed did something very, I would say, some persons call it divine. We had divine intervention over this country, whereby it appeared to have been coming our way, and that was a very, very powerful storm. It would have been very devastating for Belize if it came. Unfortunately, it stood over, I think you said the Bay Islands, and eventually it sunk into Honduras, and it recurved around Belize, the remnants, and went around, actually, to maybe even El Salvador, Guatemala, and recurved into
Tegucigalpa, Honduras, all over the place. All inland was affected, and I think it went back over the Pacific and then came back into the Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Yeah, I think it probably didn't go to, yeah, but anyway, it did do a curvature around us, and we were spared from that monster. So we do hope that it continues that way for us.
It was an ugly Category 5, right? I can remember Mitch very well. That sprung us into action. Right, an ugly Category 5 hurricane, Mitch, looking at us and just waiting to come and devastate Belize, basically. And then it just stood there and then took its turn inland, devastated a lot of Honduras, and then I think, like I said, I think it even went out to, anyway. But that was Mitch.
Yeah, it was a very powerful storm, and also very deadly, one of the most deadly storms for the region. Huh? And,
yes.
Yeah.
Because, Mitch really was horrible. They didn't hit us, but where it affected, it killed a lot of people. Yeah. Right?
It wasn't just the intensity of the winds, but also the amount of rainfall, and there was, I think, significant landslides in Honduras and Nicaragua.
Bridges being washed away, total populations being covered.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really serious. Tragic. Yeah.
So hurricanes are nothing to play with, right? And you play a very important role at the Weather Bureau because, we depend on you a whole lot to keep us posted. So now we are breathing a sigh of relief because it's not our active time yet. I mean, like we rightly said, towards the latter part of the season is when Belize tends to become very, like a hot number, right? You feel with all this responsibility on your shoulder, right? Because you make a mistake and then we're in trouble.
Certainly, it's a lot of responsibility. And of course, I must say it's not only me, we're a team. So I have my staff, my complement of meteorologists, forecasters who are highly experienced, highly trained persons, and certainly it's a relief to have people on board who are here to support you and to assist in providing that vital information that the public requires.
When a hurricane threatens Belize, you move into action right away, right? Now, what's the course of action? I know you have to brief Cabinet, you have to brief NEMO. So explain your course of action here at the Weather Bureau if we are threatened with a direct hit from a hurricane.
Yes, if we are, first of all, we are constantly monitoring and updating NEMO. I keep in contact with my CEO and with the NEMO coordinator on a daily basis. Even if weather conditions are fair, I will just give them a brief update via WhatsApp. This is the synopsis of what is happening at the moment. But once something is about to develop or threaten, I, of course, will increase the frequency of my communication with both persons. And if something poses a threat, and we have to go what we call a preliminary phase, then of course I will advise NEMO coordinator to contact the Cabinet Secretary, who will then contact Prime Minister and ask whether we declare the preliminary phase. And that means that you will see what we call the red flag without any of that flying, and that indicates that we may be threatened within 72 hours. Typically we go into that phase if a depression has formed, and there's indication that it would come our way. And certainly once we have more information and that system could be threatening us within 36 hours, we go into the second phase, which is the hurricane watch phase. And that's when you have the one red flag with the one dot in the middle, with the black dot. And that would mean that, of course, I'll be providing advisories to NEMO on a regular basis and constant communication with our ministry and our CEO and everybody for government to be prepared and for persons to be prepared. And at the final phase of the, well, not the final phase, but the final phase before the hurricane would make landfall.
Imminent.
It would make, there is almost certainty that it would make landfall on the country within 24 hours. Of course, then we go into a hurricane warning or tropical storm warning, whatever the case may be. And in that part of the operation, all staff members are to report to duty. And we are on emergency shifts. And we have a complement of at least one forecaster and a meteorologist on duty. And I personally would be, of course, also be here to be providing information and updates to NEMO and to Cabinet Secretary and to the different organizations, CMO and DEMO across the country on a constant basis of what is happening. And of course, informing the media.
We keep in touch all the time whenever there's a hurricane emergency. There are weather centers or monitoring devices all over the country to monitor the weather, because you're not only, we talk about hurricane, but then weather is changing on us on a constant basis. For example, over the weekend we had all this excess rain, and heaven knows what kind of damage that might have caused or might still cause, because the floods have not really come down. You monitor the floods as well, right? Oh, that's the hydrology department.
It's more hydrology responsibility to monitor flooding.
Okay. But you have weather stations across the country. What are they made of? What makes a weather station, and where are they located?
Okay, we have two types of weather stations, as we refer to them. We have what we call manual weather stations, where you'll have your standard instruments, your thermometers, your rain gauges, and so forth. And those will be read by a human observer once per day. And those are what we relied on in the old days, like when I started working here. We didn't have what we now call automatic weather stations. And, but to go back to the manual weather stations, like I said, it's a once daily reading. So if you don't get it at 9 o'clock, you get it at 9 in the morning, and that's it. Now we have advanced that we have automatic weather stations, 52 of them across Belize.
52?
52 automatic weather.
And you check these 52 stations every day?
Those are transmitting data to us automatically, like the name suggests, in real time. Every half an hour, we get a reading from these stations of the temperature, of the wind speed, the wind direction, the rainfall amounts, humidity, solar radiation, and different elements.
Rising waters?
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those. We do have some that monitor the river levels, I think mostly in the Cayo district and mostly in the San Ignacio, Santa Elena area. But we don't have a lot of those across the country. The hydrology department may have some more, but we don't have a lot of those. But certainly we do have a lot of other stations, like I mentioned, and that data is being ingested in real time to our database.
So, Ronald, let's look at your website right now. What are we seeing here? We're seeing that you have everything covered, like these are reports from your weather stations, right?
Yes, so our website, which is www.nms.gov.bc, we have a wealth of information on this site, including our forecasts or different products that we issue, services in terms of climate products and so on. And on the front page, if you would scroll down a bit, you will see a map. And on that map, you can select whether you want to see our district forecast, and that's the forecast that we have started issuing on June 1st of this year. We issue a 24-hour forecast for different major towns and cities across Belize, and from Corozal in the north to Punta Gorda in the south. So if you just move over each station, it will show the forecast for that particular town or city. No? Okay. It's a 24-hour forecast. And then if you choose to look at the weather stations that we have, you would probably unselect this and click on local weather stations, and then you see all these black dots. Yes.
Can I click on one of these dots here, and it will tell me what's happening in that particular station?
Yes.
Let us, for random sake, take orange, this one here.
Okay, so this is the Tawahil Station, and right now it's showing us that at Tawahil, the temperature is 90.6 Fahrenheit or 32.5 degrees Celsius, and that's at 2:30 this afternoon, so that's just 3 minutes ago. This is real-time data. The atmospheric pressure is 11.8 hectopascals. Humidity is 61%, and the wind is coming from the north at 6 knots. So this information is very important to us to monitor different areas in real time. And I mentioned that we had a severe rainfall event over the weekend, and I was able to go the day after and on the media and explain that we had, I think, 141 millimeters of rainfall in 6 hours in Tawahil. That's because we have this information coming to us in real time from these stations.
Let us look at what was happening, let's say, in Belmopan.
Okay, we just click on Belmopan, and then you will see the values comes up. So currently in Belmopan, the temperature is 89.1 Fahrenheit, which is about 31.7 Celsius, or atmospheric pressure is 1,007.2 hectopascals. Humidity is 54.6, and then you'll see the value for solar radiation and different things. No? So again, another station showing us real-time data of what is happening. Rainfall in Belmopan for today has been 1.6 millimeters.
So whatever activity happens throughout the country, in whatever part of the country, you can actually pick it up by sitting here and saying, okay, this is what is happening, and you can detect when there's danger or imminent danger in any part of the country. You know, they got the whole country covered. And
certainly we have, like I said, 52 automatic weather stations covering the entire country of Belize, and these stations are providing data to us in real time. So like you rightly mentioned, and especially when it comes to rainfall, whenever there is significant amount of rainfall falling, we can see that in real time and alert the public for the possibility of flooding.
Well, Ronald, all this is interesting, but I would like to see more of the meteorology department, right, that you had so competently. So let's do that tour that you promised me.
Sure, definitely.
There we go. Let's go then. All right.
When we come back from this break, Gordon gives us an up-close look at the day-to-day operations.
We are Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Honduras, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. Barry. Get more? Be less.
Since 2008, the Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust has created opportunities for Belizeans to develop themselves and their communities. The trust employs tools that are intuitive, collaborative, and accessible so that every Belizean is empowered to achieve their full potential. Over 200,000 Belizeans have been impacted because of our various initiatives. The Belize Natural Energy Charitable Trust, empowering Belizeans of today to create the Belize of tomorrow. Shell V-Power, with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
I remember the days when trucks used to line up at the Guatemala border, and we could have only watch as they come in loaded with LPG and then left with we Belizean dollars. Things changed since, because the Belizeans they drive now, that we have the jobs, and are definitely proud to be able to keep me dollars home. Either Elvis Roaches, and either one of the Belizean drivers for the National Gas Company. I haul butane from the new state-of-the-art terminal to the port of Big Creek. The hard work, but at the end of the day, I go home to my family and provide for them. Thanks to NGC, I do my lead part to build my country. We the all Belizeans on this team, and we proud to work hard to deliver one product will last longer and give you more value for money. I proud to work at NGC, and for you we Belizean people.
The National Gas Company Belize Limited, fueling Belize forward.
Celebration time.
Well, what's happening in here? You bump into this office here. Nice, you know, nicely set up. You know, quite pleasant.
So this is the weather analysis and forecasting section I mentioned before, also referred to as the synoptic section. This is the section of the office that operates 24/7, and we always have a weather forecaster on duty and a weather observer on duty. Okay,
who's the weather forecaster?
Currently we have Mrs. Francisca Wellington, our weather forecaster, on duty at this moment.
Everybody know that voice, you know. Francisca Wellington reporting from the National Meteorological Service. I could tell Francisca hello. Hello, Francisca. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
And how are you?
I always hear that voice on the radio, and you know, and when you want to get the weather forecast, maybe you could put on the voice and simulated reading.
Hello. Well, I am just here preparing the weather forecast for this evening, and we're going to get pretty good much weather, except for the south, of course. Just a little bit more than what we'll be getting up here. But generally speaking, good weather for the next couple of days.
Okay, that sounds like good news, because after all this lot of rain, I tell you, I'm ready to hear some good news from the National Meteorological Service. So if you were giving the forecast live now, what would you be saying?
Okay,
Hold the microphone then.
so for tonight, we'll be seeing isolated showers, except for the south, where we'll be getting a little bit more. But for Thursday and Friday, we will be getting isolated showers across the country. So we'll be seeing more sunshine.
All right. And how do you go about determining all that? You want to walk us a little bit through it?
Okay, this is a global position model. And so one of our stuff shows winds at upper levels. Okay, and that shows us what's happening above us, because what happens above us affects us below, right? So we come down upper levels, we come to lower levels, let's say about 700 millibars, that would be about 5,000 feet. It's showing us winds again closer to us and the moisture over us. And currently, if you can zoom in here, you'll see the map of Belize right here, this little area. It's showing that we'll have northeasterly winds at that level, and it's pretty much dry. Okay? And then we go farther, and we can show you what the rainfall is showing us for tonight. Okay, and let me just show you. No, let me show you this one, because this one is picking it up better. So that's for tonight. And then I'll zoom in here. All right, so it shows us the time. So this is about 6 p.m. our time. It's showing rainfall over the south, like I told you, right? And we go towards, it updates every 3 to 6 hours. So this is showing you still rainfall over the south. And it takes us right through to tomorrow morning at 6 again. So you see the rest of the country pretty much dry, but over the south, we're seeing showers. And then for tomorrow, it continues to show a little bit of rain over the south again, and then it dries out, like I was telling you. Yeah. So it's not gospel, but it's like a guidance for us. And so that's how more or less we come up with our forecast.
No, you do the forecast based, like you said, on these models that you are seeing, and that's the forecast that we hear on the radio and that you put out to the general public. What else do you use beside that? Okay,
so this is another system that shows moisture, and it's showing the entire Caribbean right through to Africa, right? And this here is showing you more or less a tropical wave, and it's showing another one here, and this one should affect us by Saturday. So Saturday we'll see a little increase, not like the past, right? This one is more or less just for a day, and it will go right through. If I
how do you know that you're just going right through? Oh, because of they make it right. The loop, right? It's
looping now, right? Looping, so you see, we have tropical waves coming off Africa here, right? Yeah. This is the next one that's going to affect us by Saturday. And we have another chart here that's showing us more or less what's happening at the surface right now. And here we have the tropical wave, right? And if I go back to this, see, it's showing you the moisture associated with it. Okay, and this shows you a time frame of how it will reach us. Okay. Along with this same model that I was showing you before. So we have to look at all of these things and come up with a forecast. Wow. Right? It's not easy.
No, it's not. Definitely not. You have a lot of concentration.
Correct.
And calculation. And
calculation. That's right. Right. There's another system here that shows you from, let's say, 1,000 millibars. That's about. Let's see.
When you talk about millibars, interpret that for us.
Okay, millibars is the measurement that we use for pressure reading, atmospheric pressure. Okay, and that works directly with height. So, like if I'm standing upstairs here, the pressure at this level will be less than if I go downstairs because it's a shorter column of air.
Okay.
So you can say it's the weight of the air over an area. You can see that, right?
Yeah, I understand that. That's why a plane flies very high, because the air is lighter and, anyway.
Right.
That's what I think.
Okay, so this is what this system is showing here. It's showing millibars on this side, and we just associate the feet along with it. So this is closer to the surface. And it is showing us about 4 to 5 days here. It goes days here, and it goes height here. And it's more or less showing you what I was telling you over this side, right? So you have 700 millibars at this level. Okay, this is today. See, it's showing us northeasterly winds, right? And these winds, yeah, these are the wind barbs. Those are the wind barbs, correct. And at this point, it's showing you the moisture. Same thing that I was showing you over here, okay? Right. So, and it goes up into the atmosphere. And then it goes today, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. So it goes across this way, showing you how the days will change and how the moisture will change, how the wind patterns will change aloft or closer to the surface.
Okay. And then the fourth
Okay.
screen will do what?
This one is showing us lightning, where lightning strikes are.
Oh, yeah?
Okay? And this is very helpful, especially here at the airport, because this system is set up where we have lightning risk 1, lightning risk 2, lightning risk 3. And lightning risk 1 would be within 9 kilometers of the airport.
Okay.
Right? And when we have lightning risk 1, we have to issue that to the control tower. They pass that on to the aircrafts. Okay? Lightning risk 1, the airport has to close for safety reason. Lightning risk 2, they can maneuver a little bit out more. It's like 19 kilometers. Right? And lightning risk 3, it means that the lightning is going away from us. But this is very helpful. All these little green barbs that you see is where we have, if we have lightning or thunderstorm activity, it will become red, and it will indicate where the lightning is.
Okay.
Right?
Well, you make me feel much more appreciative of the fact that when I'm coming in a plane, it is important that you are in communication with that plane because you know, as to advising where lightning is and how the pilot can, because they are able to steer around storms, right? If there's a concentrated area, you would advise, and then the plane would fly around that concentrated area.
Right. And I just want to take this opportunity to educate the public that we are not only here to give weather reports. We are here located at the international airport because we play a critical role in aviation, and especially for this kind of weather that I'm telling you about, lightning and thunder. Okay, because many people don't know this, right? People come, jump on plane, they don't know what's going on in the background, right? But we play a critical role. We are the science behind the safe landing and safe takeoff of airplanes. Right? Civil aviation is there to direct the airplanes, but we are the ones. Very, very critical. Right. A lot of people don't know this.
That is true.
A lot of people don't know this. So I'm taking this opportunity to educate them.
And we take it for granted. When you get to a plane the next time, remember that the Met Service play a very important role in getting you out safely and back in safely.
That is so correct. That is very important for them to remember. Right.
We have to take this particular service for granted, you know. So you can actually keep a plane on the ground. If you see danger in that plane taking off, you can actually say, hey, you have to close the airport. There should be no arrivals or landing. You know, planes fly over because of the storm in the area and that kind of thing.
That's right. You know, we always hear about flight delays. We are the ones who determine that, but it's all for safety reason, right? And again, we work 24 hours here, people like myself, the forecasters, the observers, and even before a pilot gets into a plane, wherever that pilot is coming to Belize, this pilot have to look at a special forecast that we do here. It's called the Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, or the TAF. We have to write that every 6 hours, right? And that determines planning for a pilot, right? Because if we have bad weather here, that pilot has to plan fuel. It has to plan alternative airports. It's a whole lot of things that they have to do. So even before the pilot gets into the airplane, we already have to issue this for them.
When you say Belize, he has to have all this information before he decides, okay, it's safe to take the plane out and we'll be able to land in Belize safely.
Right. Or what alternative they'll make.
Alternatives we might have.
That's right.
Yeah. I took a flight the other day and the pilot flew all the way across into Mexico and then up into Texas, and I was wondering, well, why is he making, but then he explained that it's because of weather, he was skirting weather, and so it took an extra almost half hour to reach.
That's right, and it's all for safety reason. Yeah. It's all for safety reason, but yes, I am glad that you're here. I'm taking this opportunity to tell Belizeans we're not just here for hurricanes and the tropical waves, but very critical for the airport. If this, for some unfortunate reason, we should get, we can't operate, the airport closes down.
Whenever I fly again, I will be thinking of you, right?
Yes,
for sure.
Whenever all the presidents come to Belize or our prime minister fly out and they fly in, we are the ones that have their safety in our hands. I just want Belizeans to know that. Yeah. I'm glad you're here. I always wanted to explain this to the public. Yes.
Well, I'm happy that we gave you the opportunity to do so, because that is important, you know. Those are things we take for granted. You just get on the plane and say, okay, fine, you know. And we take all these things, all this behind-the-scenes work for granted. So congratulations, and thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Francisca, how long have you been doing this?
Oh, I'm doing this for 18 years, but I'm at the Met Office for 30 years. Wow. That's right.
So you don't miss Met Office? And
well, if you want to call me that.
Yeah, I always listen to you with the weather report, you know, and you are, man, this is amazing, you know. It's good to reacquaint myself with the Weather Bureau once again.
I'm glad that you're here. Thank you very much for coming.
And thanks for talking with me, Francisca. Thank you so much for what you do for us, right, to keep us safe. All the best. A very interesting discussion indeed with Francisca, Ronald, because a lot of time, like I told her, we get in the plane and we don't realize what's going on behind the scenes. We don't realize how much the pilots and the airlines depend on this forecast that's being issued by this office before they fly you in or out of Belize.
Certainly, that's one of the critical roles that this department plays when it comes to providing information to the aviation sector. And just for clarity or for better information, the major impact or the most accidents that have occurred in terms of aircraft has been due to weather conditions. Yeah. So pilots know that weather is very important for them to operate safely. And the information that we provide to them plays a critical role in ensuring that safety and ensuring that that industry remains a part of Belize. And by default, the aviation industry also supports the tourism industry. Yeah. So again, it plays a role. It shows the role that we play in terms of supporting the economy of this country.
Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. You know, next time up there bouncing around in a plane, I say, okay, did Francisca warn the pilot that this might be here?
Yeah.
Okay. So where are you taking me now?
We are going to go to the radar room and show you some components of the radar. No? Okay. You saw the radar display a while ago, but you'll see the background of that now, where the actual radar equipment is. Okay.
Ronald, we're in the room that houses the equipment for the radar, your radar system. This is a new radar system, or?
Well, it's the newest one that we have. We had one previous to this. In terms of the amount of years, it's already over 10 years old. And Mr. Thompson will tell you in a while, a radar of this type typically have a lifetime of about 10 years. So our radar is already past the typical lifetime of a radar. So although it's new to us, it's already has some years on it already. You know?
So you need a new one then?
We'd like a new one.
Uh-huh. What's the price of one of these?
You're talking about around $3 to $4 million. But
for safety, I guess it's worth it, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, sure. And so Mr. Thompson, you said, runs the radar. Okay, Mr. Thompson, talk to me about the radar, man. How important this radar is and what all it does.
Okay, this is a Doppler weather radar, meaning that it could measure wind speeds, and it could detect rainfall or precipitation as well over the country. It covers the entire country of Belize, plus parts of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, the Caribbean Sea, the portion of the Caribbean Sea in front of Belize. So it provides the entire coverage over Belize. So whenever we have an approaching hurricane or whatever within 400 kilometers, it begins to track the actual hurricane. So I think it's very useful for the meteorologists in terms of real-time coverage of the country, in terms of rainfall and tracking hurricane when approaching the country.
You work along with the National Meteorological System, or the National Hurricane Center, sorry. You work along with the National Hurricane Center in Miami in coordination and giving reports, because I know they do these reports and then they end up relying on you to supply information from Belize side.
Basically, that would be the responsibility of the chief meteorologist. I am just a technician responsible for the...
So you just keep the equipment going?
Right. Okay. But to some extent, the data from this radar is sent to the telecommunications gateway in Washington, which is available worldwide. So the data from this radar is actually available worldwide, because I think it was an EU project or a donation to Belize. Some 4 Caribbean countries, Belize, Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados were the 4 recipient countries. And one of the agreements in that project was that the data from this radar would be available publicly. So.
No, the chief Met told me that this has seen its lifetime, basically, but you have managed to keep it going. How many more years do you think you're going to get out of this?
Well, basically, the last radar that we had was installed, I think, around 1972. When I came here in 1995, that radar was still operational, and it went way up to around, I think, 2002. And I think in 2007, this radar was installed. I think Mr. Fuller was the chief meteorologist at that time. So 7 years, basically, it has about 10, close to 15 years already that this radar is operating, right? One of the major failures that we had was the magnetron, which is the heart of the transmitter, the farthest cabinet over there. And I think that part of the equipment actually cost about $250,000. Through the agency of Mr. Gordon, we got the replacement through the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology. So the whole unit is right there. And the staff here, myself included, we managed to replace the magnetron, and then we brought up the radar back again. So far that has been the only major failure with this radar.
This radar here controls, well, the radar itself is on the roof, right?
Actually, what is up on the roof is the reflector or the antenna.
The reflector, the antenna, sorry.
Right, so the microwave is generated in the transmitter, the magnetron. It goes through the waveguide, and it gets transmitted through the reflector or the parabolic antenna in the dome, right? Right, so, but this is a transmit-receive antenna, meaning that it uses the same system to receive incoming signals or echoes as well. So whenever we have the rainfall or raindrops outside, the microwave signal bounces back, comes back through the same reflector, gets processed through our receiver, and that is what the meteorologists get to see downstairs after software processing. So the actual product would be seen down there by the meteorologist's office.
So where we were just now with Francisca is where the work that this radar is doing is being translated and disseminated, right? So she has to understand exactly what this is doing and break it down for us like she was doing while we were downstairs.
Yeah, one further thing is that I think one of the later developments was that the actual images from this radar now are real-time on the website, on the Met Service website. So if you go to the National Met Service website, you will see real-time pictures from this radar. So that is available to the public as it is right now.
Explain that what we are seeing right now.
Okay, the actual screen that you're seeing there is for maintenance purpose with the cursor that's rotating. That is raw data from this radar, but that has to be processed through software, and then the end product of that would be received by the meteorologist. There you would see the actual topograph or the actual map of Belize with its confines, borders, and everything, so you could actually make sense of where the actual raindrops or the rainfall are occurring over Belize, right?
This has been a wonderful visit, and I got distracted because we came out to the roof and we heard the plane engines roaring in the background. So we are really in front of the strip, the landing strip here at the Philip Gosson International Airport, which is right out there, right at the back of us. But on top of this building, there are two domes. They look like domes. This one would be what?
Okay, the smaller one is where we host the antenna for our radar sound equipment. And basically what that is the equipment that we send up on the weather balloon twice per day. And that antenna in there will be tracking that equipment, which will be transmitting in real time through radio signals back to us. And that goes up to about 20 miles in the atmosphere before the balloon bursts. But while it's going up, it's transmitting information to us on temperature, humidity, wind direction, wind speed, and pressure at different levels in the atmosphere as it goes up.
That's impressive. How big is that balloon?
That balloon at the time of release is about, I would say, maybe if I extend my hands like this, that's about 4 or 5 feet wide or diameter. But as it goes up, it expands because of the fact that the pressure decreases with height. So therefore, the pressure inside the balloon is causing it to expand. And eventually, when it gets to about 20 miles more or less, the pressure is too much and the material cannot sustain it anymore. The balloon bursts and the equipment comes back to ground. But at that point, we don't normally recover the equipment because most of the information that we want, we would have already received it via the real-time transmission.
And there's no way you knowing exactly where that would drop anyway, right?
Certainly. It may fall over the sea, maybe all the way inland, sometimes even across the border, so it can go anywhere.
And that's done twice a day. What are the times?
It is released at 5 in the morning and at 5 in the evening.
Okay. Wow. 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening. All right. And so that opens up, or?
No, we don't really have to open that up. The equipment is in there. We release the balloon from downstairs. Okay. But once we turn on the computer within the same section that you were in earlier, the forecasting section, that computer will automatically trigger the antenna to track that balloon.
Okay, so this is the antenna that tracks the balloon. And then this is the radar, right? Would this be the radar?
Yes, that's where the radar antenna is housed. We call it a radome within that big red and white ball, which when many children come here, they think it's a football.
Well, Chris thought it was a football,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that houses the radar equipment, the one that actually spins, and would give you the readings that we saw on the computer.
Yes, it spins both horizontal axis and also vertically. Okay. So it's giving us information near the surface and also what's within the clouds. So it can give us a cross-section, actually, of a thunderstorm, for example.
Excellent. Well, Ronald, I want to thank you so much for this eye-opening tour of the National Meteorological Service of Belize, and really it makes one appreciate the importance that meteorology plays in all our lives, in our everyday lives. Something that we often take for granted. Oh, bad weather today, good weather tomorrow, that kind of thing. But we often do not realize the importance that goes into forecasting the right weather and the activities that can take place. So thank you so much, and congratulations to you and your staff for the wonderful job you're doing keeping our nation safe and informed.
Certainly, it has been a pleasure to have you here at the Met Service, and we also want to thank you for the opportunity that you have given us in terms of highlighting the work that this department does, and of course highlighting the fact that we are not just producing general weather forecasts, but we are also producing products and services that are tailored to important sectors of the Belizean economy. So it's a good opportunity for us to highlight those those products and show the importance of this department to Belize's socio-economic development. And of course, I want to mention, close off by saying that we are forecasting an active hurricane season. I did mention that different agencies are forecasting certain amounts of hurricanes this year, and it's possible that none might affect us or that more than one might affect us. But a very important point for persons to know is that it only takes one storm to affect us for it to be an active season for us. So that's a very important point that I want our residents to consider. And of course, to pay keen attention to the products coming from this department and to pay keen attention to official information and not to listen to rumors during the hurricane season.
Well, Ronald Gordon, Chief Meteorological Officer, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time spent. All the best. Belize Watch, knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what?